Hey, chestnuts. Okay, today we have our game. Our game today is Carlsen versus Kasparov. Okay, I mean, this is a pretty epic match just because Carlsen was so young and he managed to do pretty well against Kasparov, but we'll see how well. Okay, so Carlsen was 13 and this was the Reykjavik Rapid of 2004. And Kasparov, is still the highest rated player during this time. He arrived pretty late, and he had never played someone this young, so he was probably a little bit like, I got this. All right, the clocks were ticking in every other board, and all right, so Kasparov finally arrived, and this was Carlsen's first move. Okay. D4, oh, D5, D4, C6, knight to F3, knight to F6, knight to C3, E6, then bishop to G5. What's funny is that Kasparov actually played this a lot, this bishop move, at least in his earlier years. This bishop to G5 move, but he would often exchange as well, this, and then castle queenside. So that's what Kasparov used to do very often. All right, but it's Carlsen playing this as white. Okay, so knight B to D7, E3, queen to A5, putting pressure here. Knight to D2, reinforcing the queen side since Kasparov is now on the queen side. So Carlsen decides maybe I should reinforce the queen side here. Bishop to B4, queen to C2, castle. Kasparov could also make it a little bit contested center like this with C5, but he chose this move to castle, bishop to E2, then E5. So instead of playing for this, the C5 move, he plays for the E5 square. Okay, so Carlsen castles, E takes D4, then knight to B3, attacking the pawn and the queen. Queen to B6. Yeah, you can't take this knight because the queen would be under fire, right? Okay, E takes D4, then D takes C4, then bishop takes C4, then A5. Okay, solidifying this bishop. A4, queen to C7, rook A to E1, H6, bishop to H4, and now we have bishop back to D6, aiming at this pawn, right? H3. Then we have knight to B6, bishop takes F6, and this is where some interesting tactics comes along. Bishop takes F6, and I'll give you a few seconds to figure out what Kasparov played. All right, Kasparov played not this move. Knight takes C4. Ooh, getting rid of this bishop that was attacking the queen, right? Sometimes you have to, when you're playing a game, you have to check whether you should really take with that piece. Maybe there's a better piece you can capture. So, all right, because if you go G takes F6, there's a hole in your king side, and that's not even the worst of your problems. There's this move, queen to G6 check, H8, king H8. Then, yeah, you're just gonna get smothered if bishop to F4 here. Then if bishop goes to F4 instead of this, then the rook just takes this, right? Because it's two pieces. All right, so if bishop to F5, then yeah, this attack is pretty impossible to stop. You're gonna get mated. All right, so that's Kasparov did not blunder. Of course, he took the C4. Knight goes to E4. Bishop to H2 check. King to H1. If you just go, let's say, since this knight is now attacking this bishop, right? If you just go bishop to... Whoops. If you just go, like... If you just go, say, bishop to F5, then, queen just takes this knight, right? So yeah, queen just takes this knight. If you go So then king to h1, knight to d6. If you go to... Actually, knight to b6 might actually have been better for Kasparov in this position. Knight to b6, f4, bishop takes, g3, and then bishop to g5. And now white's king is open, right? So this was also a possibility. Okay, so but in this move, king takes h2, and to d6, king takes h2, and now Kasparov is free to take this knight, right? And with check, so Carlsen cannot take this knight back. Bishop to e5, attacking the queen, and then now we have knight to d6. And it was white is actually so much better here. Look at this rook, and then this rook has not even come to play. This knight can get active anytime soon, targeting this pawn. This rook is not active. I mean, and this bishop hasn't even been developed. So white is actually a lot better here, and it was in this position that you could see a video of Kasparov going, oh, and he was literally shaking his head like fiercely. Oh. So he was probably frustrated himself that, you know, he was down this much, or he was at a really bad position against a 13-year-old. So hey, but the 13-year-old was future world champion, so. Alright, so next move, Carlsen played queen to c5. Carlsen actually missed the best move here. d5, rook to d8, queen to c3, and then f6. And yeah. Carlsen has much better chances against his king. He's contesting, right? And there's not much that black can do here. Alright. I mean, it's still like a difficult game to win, but now that there are these holes right here, right? And there's this dangerous attack here. Alright. Black can't capture this because the queen takes this queen. Okay. But Carlsen played queen to c5, which is a very, you know, natural looking move. You're putting more pressure on the pinned piece. Rook to d8, d5, now d5, okay. Queen to d7, knight to d4, knight to f5, d takes, b takes, and captures, and rook to e8. Because this knight's going to capture this, right? Kasparov could also play queen to d5, and then rook to c. Carlsen would play rook to c1, because if you go knight takes d8, you know, your queen's going to get captured. So this is also possibility. Bishop b7, rook to c7, bishop c7, queen takes, rook to d2, and then knight takes a5. And Carlsen would have the clear advantage in this line. Okay, bishop takes g2. Okay, not bishop to e4 because here, yeah. I mean, bishop to e4 is okay, but this would happen. Okay, so bishop to takes g2 is a little better because you're actually capturing a piece. Knight to c4, rook to c2, king takes, knight to e3 check, and if you capture this, rook takes, and that's exactly the best move actually. Then rook takes c5, and then now Kasparov would really be behind. Carlsen would have a clear advantage, like a winning advantage, because you have this knight and this bishop against this rook, right? And white has an extra pawn, so yep. So that's a possibility also. Okay. Rook to e8. Rook to d1. Queen to e6. Rook to f1. Yeah, Carlsen actually also missed bishop to c7 here, controlling this square, but it's a rapid, so it's really hard to, you know, see everything, so it's understandable. Now this rook hardly can't like contest these squares. Carlsen would have complete control. Okay, bishop to b7, knight to d4, knight takes, queen to g6, queen to g4. Carlsen could have also chosen to keep the queens on the board with bishop to g3 or f3, which looks like it creates a lot of holes, but in actuality the king is okay if you keep this dark square bishop, protecting all the dark squares, right? Okay, so by queen to g4, Carlsen chooses to trade. I mean, he may have thought that he was a little better here, but not really, because now white has equalized, right? Okay, so let's see how the game goes. Queen takes, h takes, bishop to c6, b3, protecting this pawn right here, right? f6, Bishop to c3, rook takes. So yeah, at this point, it was a pretty equal position. Like, even though white's pawn structure is not, white has an extra pawn, his kingside pawn structure is not so good, right? He has double pawns here. So even though he's ahead by a piece, it's really tough to make any headway here. So this is drawish position, and yeah, white can't make any. All right, so I mean, but it's a pretty good result to draw probably the greatest player who ever, or like arguably the greatest player who ever lived in Kasparov, and when you're 13 years old. So I think Carlsen did pretty well here. All right, and the other two games that they played, I mean, Kasparov annihilated Carlsen, but that's what you expect out of, like, you know, that's what you expect since Carlsen was only 13. So yeah, but it was a pretty significant game because we actually saw the future world champion and, you know, arguably the greatest player ever go against each other in a game. So this is why it's notable. If only, you know, they were both older. Commentators said that perhaps we'll see this matchup sooner or later, but Kasparov actually retired like a year later. So sad. All right, okay, dudes. If you enjoyed this game, you know, smash that subscribe button like the clock. Smash the like button like a clock, and hit that notification bell like a clock. And I will see you guys very soon.